The opiate epidemic in Ontario. Did you know that there were 500 deaths due to opiate overdoses this year alone? That's one death every 14 days. Fentanyl, Dilaudid, hydromorph. On a daily basis, we are seeing our family members dying in record numbers from these drugs. How can this be happening? Most of these drugs are prescribed by well-intentioned physicians, but are being abused by people who are getting them from their friends, family, or even off the internet. Then they're mixing them in dangerous ways. Are you a parent worried that your teenager might be taking these drugs? Are you an opiate user who needs help getting off prescription medication? Learn more about some of the various treatments like methadone, Suboxone, or where to get a Narcan kit. Join us today on Toronto Speaks Addiction. Welcome to Toronto Speaks Addiction. I'm your host, Dr. Vera Tarman. Tonight, we're discussing the distressing phenomena of opiate overdoses in Ontario. Drugs such as fentanyl, Dilaudid, hydromorph are killing us in record numbers. Why are so many people taking these dangerous narcotics? How are they getting them? Is there something we can do to stop this alarming trend of senseless deaths? I have the pleasure of introducing a true leader in the field of addiction medicine, Dr. Kumar Gupta. He is also an investigative coroner for the province of Ontario, so he knows firsthand how serious this problem has become. And we are joined by Signe, a woman who has been hooked or was hooked on heroin and is now safely in recovery, harm reduction style. We will hear how she got addicted to opiates and how she found one version of recovery, even though she may still use drugs occasionally. Welcome, Dr. Gupta and Signe. So I'm going to start with you, Dr. Gupta. Can you please tell me what's the problem? How big is the problem, and what are the drugs that we're worried about?
Well, you're right. We got a really big problem in Canada. Fentanyl is it is a nationwide crisis right now in Canada.
And that's the drug now that we're worried about,
Absolutely,
isn't it?
fentanyl. And the reason why fentanyl is such a dangerous drug, Vera, is because it's so potent. So when you look at the potency of fentanyl versus morphine, it's about 50 to 100 times more potent than morphine and 100 times more potent than heroin. So this is a drug that we should all be frightened about. And when you look at fentanyl deaths in the past year, it has doubled over 5 years. So we got a real epidemic, and it is now the leading cause of opiate deaths in Ontario.
Yeah, and you know, a few years ago it was OxyContin, and we thought we figured out the problem by closing down Purdue from being able to prescribe that. But all of a sudden we have this one, which appears to be bigger.
When OxyContin kind of diminished, we got the mother of all opiates coming in, which is fentanyl.
Wow.
And let me tell you, the public, I don't think, understands the true magnitude of the problem in Toronto and Ontario. Let me put it in perspective.
Please.
In Ontario, the number of deaths, and in Canada, the number of deaths of fentanyl far exceeded the number of deaths from motor vehicle accidents and homicides combined.
Wow. So
let us not forget that behind those numbers is a terrible pain for families who've lost loved ones. You know, as you know, every life is precious. It's a gift from God. And when we lose a life needlessly by this drug, and let me tell you why we're losing lives needlessly.
Please do.
Many of the drug users that are dying from fentanyl use are recreational drug users. They're not daily heroin users. They're not people that typically use drugs on a daily basis. Many of the people that are using drugs work during the day, they pay their taxes, they have a normal week, they end up partying on a Friday night, they use a little bit of cocaine or something else which may be laced with fentanyl, and they end up overdosing and dying. And that's what's hitting the coroner's office in Ontario. And let me give you some perspective. Just about a month ago, 5 people overdosed very close in time to each other after snorting some cocaine, which they had no idea was laced with fentanyl.
Oh, wow.
And it was quite dramatic, the overdoses. They all snorted the cocaine, and literally within minutes, they all overdosed and were rushed to the hospital.
They didn't even know they were taking an opiate.
They had no idea. And the problem with fentanyl is it's such a powerful opiate in small, minute quantities. So you can have a 2 milligram, which is a very small amount, can cause a lethal dose in an adult. And the way it works is it causes rapid central nervous system depression in a very rapid manner, which leads to respiratory depression, which leads to an overdose. And let me stress this fact that these deaths occur within minutes, not hours, within minutes.
Within minutes.
And you know, let me tell you, this epidemic does not discriminate. It affects the very rich, the very poor, the prominent, the not so prominent. It affects everybody.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. So I understand the person doesn't know that they're buying it. What about the dealer? Why would they be selling it? Like,
well, you know, that's a good question. I mean, sometimes there's cross-contamination of fentanyl in the cocaine that's coming out right now in Canada, in the marijuana that's coming out.
In the marijuana
In the
too.
marijuana as well, in the crystal meth coming out, in the heroin. So sometimes the dealer will intentionally put the fentanyl in the heroin, but sometimes it's unintentional. And so so we call it the drug in disguise, because it just takes a small amount of this stuff, literally dust of it, where it's going and cross-contaminating other drugs, where now recreational drug use is never going to be the way it used to be. Before, when people recreationally used drugs in Ontario, they knew what they got a nice high for the evening, and they had a normal week for the rest of the week.
Right.
It's like Russian roulette. You never know what you're going to get, and the problem's getting bigger.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So that's the recreational user. Now, one of the things that you mentioned is that a person, it can actually be in heroin. So it might actually be in somebody who is using, but carefully, because they've been doing it for many years. And actually, Signe, this might be your story that I'd like you to talk about. Is what about the person who knows how much to use? They're seasoned. They know where to go. They're dying too. That's what I'm hearing you say. Signe, you have been willing to come on to the show to talk about your own history of opiate addiction. So why don't you start with just telling a little bit about that and then your experience?
Well, I've struggled with opiate addiction almost all my life, since I was a teenager. And I've had long periods of abstinence and probably more long periods of using. I traveled a lot when I was younger. I went to India, and where it's really, really cheap, and lived there for a while, thinking that, you know, I was following my drug. And so yeah, I mean, it's been a struggle all my life. I did a lot of things in my life besides struggle with addiction. I got a master's degree in political sociology. I traveled extensively. I've worked with the marginally housed, and now I've come to this point in my life where I'm learning to accept myself the way I am.
Which is a regular user,
which
or
is, yeah, a fairly regular user. And
but still functional.
I'm functional, and the reason that I'm functional, one of the reasons I'm functional, is because of harm reduction and because of methadone. And methadone, what methadone does, while it's not really the drug I would choose to do if I had my druthers, but it takes away all the desperation. So before there was any methadone available, if you got opiate sick, if you needed your opium, you would do desperate things to get enough money.
Would you turn to using something like fentanyl, which is so much more potent?
Well, I have tried fentanyl because it's around a lot now. It's just about almost all you can find in Toronto these days is fentanyl. So yes, I've tried it, and it is very potent, but you have to be so careful. And fortunately, I choose never to use alone, and I'm very careful about practicing the harm reduction tool and using the harm reduction tools that I do have.
Does it frighten you that there's been this shift in potency of opiate? Because you probably don't even know what you're buying. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, I think a lot of the reasons for this shift is prohibition, And I think that, you know, when OxyContin changed to OxyNeo, that was asking for trouble, because it sent people who were on OxyContin and could get OxyContin, sent them onto the street to try and find something that, because the formulary changed, they couldn't use OxyContin anymore. So it got them introduced to the street scene, and before you knew it.
Yeah. So, I mean, really, we doctors have created this mess in a way, haven't we?
We've created it partially. I mean, this is, if I can demonstrate.
Yes, please do.
This is the fentanyl patch.
Okay.
And fentanyl patch is used for chronic pain. So this is a typical patch.
And this existed before, but we had OxyContin, we had other drugs.
did.
Those doors were closed because you said it was taken off the formulary, and then people realized, oh, we have this.
We did.
Okay.
And then what people would then find the use of is that they would take the patch. I'm not going to take it out just because it's potency. They would put on a spoon and they would light it up. And then they found that that was a wonderful high for them to smoke it or to snort it. The problem is, and very similar to what she's saying, is that you never know exactly how much you're going to get.
Exactly.
So when you're boiling it with a lighter, and is the camera on the fentanyl patch, by the way? When you're boiling on a lighter, you might get a very high concentrate or very low concentrate.
And there's no way you can
and
tell.
you don't know. So it very much is a Russian roulette of drugs.
It's not distributed evenly throughout the patch, is basically what he's saying.
Yeah.
People have tried, because they don't want to use the whole patch in one go, they've tried cutting it up. And that's a problem too, because you still don't know.
It's not distributed evenly.
No, it's not distributed evenly.
Yeah.
So.
And then the other problem is powder form of fentanyl is coming in. And the powder form is very, very dangerous. It is extremely small, minute amount of dust powder, literally dust, where it can be going into the cocaine, into the marijuana, which I talked about.
Yeah.
You know, when we look at the pop star Prince, we all grew up with Prince, right? The musical artist. We would never know in a million years that this vibrant musical artist would have died from a fentanyl overdose.
Yeah.
And he died from the fentanyl overdose because he didn't know the painkiller that he was getting. He thought he was addicted to Percocets. And somehow towards the end, the painkiller he got was actually fentanyl, and he had no idea. And that's the real tragedy of this drug, is that people are dying and they don't know what they took. You know, if they at least knew what they took, it wouldn't be so tragic. But the tragedy is that they have no idea what they're getting, they have no idea what they took, and suddenly they're no longer there, and the family is left with the puzzles of what could have possibly happened when he had such a wonderful week and everything was perfect and we were joking and laughing, and he went to a party and he never came home.
Yeah, so Signe, I think you have a story of exactly something like that happened. Somebody actually took more without knowing it. And
exactly.
In a way, this might lead to what should we do?
Well, we had been using fentanyl pretty regularly, and we thought we had the dose right, and this one day, whatever the reason, it could be many things. It could be he was particularly tired that day, or he was particularly run down that day, or whatever happened, and this person overdosed. And I could tell he'd overdosed because he wasn't responsive, and his lips were turning blue. But fortunately, I have a naloxone kit in my possession at all times, and I went and got the naloxone, drew up and hit him in the butt with it, and within 30 seconds his color came back. He went, he took deep breaths, and
You essentially saved his life.
and having that naloxone kit essentially saved his life.
Yeah.
And I had to monitor him for the rest of the day, because after you do the naloxone, sometimes it comes back. The fentanyl will come back. It's very powerful, this stuff.
Well, the naloxone only works for a short period of time.
And naloxone only works for a short period of time.
Yeah.
So I monitored him. Fortunately, he didn't go under again, but...
Okay. So do you want to, I understand you brought one with you. If you want to just explain what it is.
Absolutely. So what naloxone is an opiate antagonist. So what it does is the minute you inject the naloxone in the person's body, it removes the opiate from the opiate receptors. And so it prevents the central nervous system depression.
Which is the cause of the death.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The problem with fentanyl is it's such a potent drug. Remember, it's 100 times more potent than heroin.
Yeah, and you said it takes minutes.
You would have to take literally many injections, and it's very important for the public to know that they can't just rely on this, that the 911 call has to simultaneously be made while they're injecting that, because they have to go to the hospital regardless. And
I mean, this is like an EpiPen for a peanut allergy.
Absolutely.
It just buys you 20 minutes
it's
to
a
get to the
breakthrough
emerge.
for the government. The government has made vigorous attempts to kind of battle this epidemic, which is out of control.
Yes.
And what they've come up with, the naloxone kits throughout all the pharmacies now, or most of the pharmacies in Ontario. And if there's not, they're going to. The goal is that every pharmacy in Ontario, by the end of next year, by the beginning of this year, actually, would next year would have a naloxone kit.
Does it cost money?
I don't know about that. I don't know about that. But what naloxone kit is this is a kit.
Yeah.
They would open up these vials, and this is the actual naloxone, if I can get it out of the thing. And what they would do is the person would then break the vial.
Yeah.
There is a needle in the kit. They would draw up the syringe, and just as she said, you would inject the person.
Any muscle.
What we
any
hope
body.
will happen, and this would often, you can maybe concur with me, is what happens often is because the people that are injecting and helping their friend don't want the police around.
Right.
There's drugs there, there's a lot of other paraphernalia there, they don't want to be implicated in any way. So
Right. Just
often
hold-
I think what
hold the
happens
kid up.
is that they'll inject, but they may not call 911. So the really important
Right.
thing is that the injection and the 911 call are equally important, because there are people that are getting the injections that get revived, but then literally
back
within
down.
an hour they're
But
kind of going under again.
Is there a good Samaritan law or something that
Can I
protects the
say?
person? Yeah, go ahead, Signe. Sorry.
I just wanted to say that I think things are going to have to change a lot before you can get people who use drugs to phone 911, because the kind of reception they get in emergency is just heavy with stigma, and the way they're treated by doctors and the nursing staff is really. People just don't want to phone 911 because they've experienced that kind of treatment before. They're treated like second-class citizens, and unless things change and unless, doctors become a lot less judgmental and the nursing staff becomes a lot less judgmental, you're just not going to get people calling 911.
But what about the legalities? Is there a
We're working on that.
yeah? Oh,
Well, legally, in the
Samaritan
Criminal
Law.
Code of Canada,
Yeah.
you could have a friend
Yes.
overdose, and
Yes.
you don't have to help him.
Okay.
In fact, you could
Yes.
take the friend from the couch where he's unresponsive,
Yes.
put him outside the hallway of your building,
Yeah.
and there'd be no legal consequence. And if it's your loved one or spouse, there's a different legality involved there.
right. But I'm thinking about if you call somebody, they come in and they see all the utensils, and then now you've exposed yourself to getting arrested or something.
In my experience, that doesn't happen.
No?
It doesn't happen. I think that the reality is that, the police are relieved, and the public is relieved that the 911 call is happening.
Yes.
And in fact, the people that call 911 are actually commended, surprisingly enough, that they are actually commended to call 911.
Yes. Okay.
It should be like that.
But
It
hasn't
should be
been
like
your
that.
It's not
experience?
like that, though. No.
Yeah.
And,
Okay.
and we are working, the harm reduction people in the harm reduction field are working on this Good Samaritan Law. They have them in the States.
Yes.
They have them in several states, I believe,
Yes.
now, which a Good Samaritan Law would say that if you call 911 because your buddy overdosed, then the police there's a blanket, no arrest, no consequence will fall on you if the police come along at all, if they do. So, and we should have that law in Canada.
Okay. Can I wanted
It
to
would
take a
save
slight.
lives.
I wanted to take a slight segue. So that's about Narcan. Because fentanyl is so potent, if we wanted, let's say somebody has an addiction, now they have a very potent addiction. Would something like some of the other alternatives, let's say they want to stop that lifestyle, would something like the general treatment like methadone or Suboxone be sufficient for that kind of a heavy load of opiate need?
Well, it's a dangerous drug to mess with, but it really is the only treatment options we have. We have medical detox. Some people don't want either. They choose a medical detox, which is quite dramatic
Yes.
because of the powerful nature of the opiate.
I would think it's more dramatic than
Absolutely.
the OxyContin or even
But
heroin.
Suboxone and methadone are viable options. I've had my patients who are addicted to fentanyl get on Suboxone. Many are doing dramatically better, improve functioning, and you know, I personally actually now choose Suboxone over methadone simply because the overdose rate is much less.
I see,
And I think
yeah.
the movement in Ontario really is Suboxone is moving forward as the #1 drug of choice for treatment.
Are you finding more people now hooked on fentanyl than I mean, we've seen the shift from heroin to OxyContin and Percocets, and is it now becoming more, because it sounds like it's so easy, recreational use, and now suddenly
It
you're,
really is, as you said, replacing the OxyContin.
yeah,
It really is. So 3 years ago, the urines that I would collect from my
Yes.
patients would be positive OxyContin. Now it's heroin and fentanyl mixed.
right, oh,
and
it's the
and,
mix.
and so a combination, and then there's obviously the fentanyl that they had no idea how they got it, and there's a cocaine there, and then they suddenly realize that their cocaine is being laced with the fentanyl.
So is it possible that somebody who thought they were smoking pot is now also addicted to fentanyl because they've been getting it from the same person with the same mix?
It's a possibility of the future. So what's
Yeah.
happening is
I mean, that's really scary.
there are reports of marijuana being laced with fentanyl,
Yes.
and deaths related to that.
Yes.
And I believe that that's going to be moving forward, and that's why it's such a dangerous drug. It's a really frightening crisis because before, when we dealt with the opiate crisis, we knew what we were dealing with. Now we're dealing with people addicted to cocaine, crystal meth, or recreational users, as I talked about,
Yeah.
have no idea what they got.
Yeah.
And it's fentanyl is such a dangerous drug that when the drug squad go in to confiscate fentanyl for houses, they're wearing total bodysuits because fentanyl, just be aware that fentanyl can also get in your skin and you can overdose.
Right.
You can inhale the fentanyl and you
Yeah.
can overdose.
Yeah.
And it's that potent.
Signe, I want to go back to you because for somebody like you who lives in that world, you're used to. You've lived a long life with this, and
have.
it's partly because you've learned to manage.
That's right.
In your way.
That's
And
right.
now you're in a circumstance that's completely unmanageable.
Yes.
Doesn't that scare you straight?
Oh, well, no, it doesn't scare me straight, but it's scary. I mean, you learn who to buy your dope from, and you learn to try and stick with the same person all the time, and you're careful. You must be vigilant, ever vigilant.
Yeah.
And it's not. I've never done it because I wanted to die. There was no. I don't
Yes.
want to die. I love life. It's part of it. It makes living so much better, actually.
Yeah.
So, but I really don't think that, just to get off to what Mr. Gupta was saying, I don't really think that it's laced in marijuana yet. But I suppose it could get like that, but I don't see the cost effectiveness to the dealer. I mean, fentanyl can be quite expensive.
Now, I'm just wondering, we have a few minutes left, and I want to cover the what should we do. So we're doing this, the Narcan, and you're saying it's going to be across the board. Is there something else we can do, either as physicians, as patients, as...
Well, Vera, we're doing it right now. I mean, public awareness is the key. People should know when they're using recreational drugs on a Friday night that when they snort cocaine
Yeah.
at a friend's place, and when they use maybe a little bit of crystal meth or something, experimenting,
Yes.
because that's what it's affecting right now. So recreational drug users, this drug is killing. She's lucky. She's smart.
I know.
She knows exactly
I know.
what to do. She's going to test it. She has the skills and the knowledge, and she fits with a class of drug users that have that skills and knowledge, and they will live forever. But the recreational users,
so.
It's the
who
naive
have no
user.
intention
Yeah.
of using fentanyl, they have no intention
Yeah.
of taking something that powerful,
Yeah.
are the ones that are dying.
So why can't we stop the drug, take it off the market? This is a potent drug, fentanyl.
Prohibition
Like, how long has it
never
been
works.
around?
Prohibition.
Well, the
never
problem
works.
is, Vera, and I agree with her,
Yeah.
is that it's not the fentanyl patch so
Okay,
much that is
yeah.
killing people, and those people are ending up at the coroner's office.
Yeah.
It's a powder form. And
Okay.
it's a powder form that's ending up being laced with the cocaine. So
Exactly.
whether we take this off the market, the powder form will expand. And you know, the key for us is public awareness and really to reduce stigma. You know,
which is what Signe you're saying.
You know, when a smoker who smokes for 30 years and dies from lung cancer, when that person dies, the people in the hospital bed say, "I'm so sorry about your loss." But when a drug user dies from their drug use, the attitude is, well, this was going to happen. This, you know, they got almost what they deserved, and that's the attitude that the public has. And what they have to realize is that opioid dependency, addiction, is really a chronic illness. It's a dependency. It's a brain disease.
Yes.
And like her, she's living proof. She's a very functional, very intelligent woman who's used all her life and plans to continue to use. But there are, you know, the stigma has to be reduced.
Yes.
And public awareness.
Well, we have just about 90 seconds or so. So if there's something that you want to say that you haven't said that you want people to hear, please, whoever wants to go first, please, let's take the time.
Please, everybody who's using an opiate, please go to the Works and get a kit. They give them to you for free.
The Works is where?
The Works is on Victoria and Dundas.
Okay.
Or go to South Riverdale Community Health Center. They have them there too, and they're wonderful people there, and you won't feel stigmatized at all, and you should always have one with you if you're going to be using opiates.
And as you said, to be with somebody else, which is what happened with Philip Seymour Hoffman. He did it alone.
Exactly.
Anyway, you want to take the last 30 seconds or so?
We are in a different time in society. We have a real crisis in Ontario and Canada. And the message is really to the recreational drug users out there who have normal 9-to-5 jobs and who literally work every day and don't use drugs through the week but want to get high on a Friday night. When you go to that party and a white powder is passed by to you, be very aware that you don't know what it is anymore. We're in a different time. You could die, and it may not be worth that chance take.
Okay. Now, this is really good information for people to hear. I really want to thank you. Well, that's all the time we have today. I'd like to give Dr. Kumar Gupta and Signe a special thank you for helping us to understand opiate addiction, particularly fentanyl, as well as the possibility of recovery and careful use. Perhaps this knowledge may prevent a senseless overdose. Remember, there is help. Addiction is a medical disease, and there are ways to treat this condition successfully if you ask for help. We can stop this opiate epidemic of deaths. You or your loved one do not have to become a statistic. I'm your host, Dr. Vera Tarman, and thanks for watching Toronto Speaks Addiction.